Very pleased to have Sam Anthony here. He's the founder of Your News, which is an alternative to mainstream media, calling all citizen journalists. We're going to talk about that in a second. If you are a citizen journalist, you want to be one, we're going to find out from Sam how you can work for Your News and compete with 60 Minutes, because now 60 Minutes is missing their executive producer. We're going to start here before we get into Your News and talk about how here we see the top producer at 60 Minutes. This is the Associated Press. The top producer at 60 Minutes has quit. He says he can no longer run the show as he always has. So the Associated Press writes about this guy who is formerly, Bill Owens is his name, and he's formerly the top producer, basically, of CBS's 60 Minutes. And they start out with the first line saying his show is involved in a bitter dispute with President Donald Trump. The top executive at the storied CBS News show 60 Minutes abruptly resigned on Tuesday while he said he's losing the freedom to run it independently. And essentially, the article goes on to say that Trump sued 60 Minutes for $20 billion last fall, claiming it deceptively edited an interview with his Democratic election opponent, Kamala Harris. CBS denied it had done anything to give an advantage to Harris and released the full transcript of its interview. But because of all of this and the scrutiny now on the show, this guy's like, look, I don't have the freedom to run it the way I did. And you'll see a lot of journalism outlets saying, the objectivity in news is gone. Our journalistic ethic is gone. The Trump administration is coming down on journalism. I see journalists posting this actually quite a bit nowadays. All of a sudden, they've woken up to the First Amendment. They remember that the First Amendment exists. They forgot about it for like the last 5 to 10 years, but now all of a sudden they're freaking out about it. And so this is another example for them of like the freedom of the press being etched away. Now, Sam and I might sit back and say, wow, I mean, I don't know, 60 Minutes seems like it may have had some issues for a long time. And this probably is not the first, and even if you believe this even is an issue, but let's just like take it away for a second and say, should they or shouldn't they have more oversight for management? I mean, in other words, I guess, Sam, my first question for you is, he's alleging that these journalists that worked on 60 Minutes had an independence that made the show great. And now he can't make the show great anymore because they're looking over his shoulder too much. So now it's going to suck. What do you think about this?
Well, I think that this couldn't come at a better time. I just wish it would have been much earlier, right? I mean, for me, and I think you would agree, all of us are completely sickened by the mainstream media and the lies they've been putting out. Now, I saw the edited version of this, and I saw the uncut version, which I'm sure you did too. And so, Allison, I think Trump has a right to sue them. But the issue now, the problem that they're facing is they used to be able to walk all over everybody. And now the problem is when you're screwing with billionaires, you can't win, right? I mean, you can't run them out of money. Look at what they did with lawfare with Trump. I mean, it would have bankrupted all of us. We'd never been able to fight it. But this guy not only fought it, he got back into the White House. So I say good riddance. And by the way, good to see you again.
What do you think about the allegation, basically, if you read in the AP, and not the only outlet to kind of put it in this perspective, but they're giving a lot of props to 60 Minutes, saying they've run an extraordinary series of tough stories about the new administration since it took office. Saying President Trump angrily denounced the show on social media after its April 13th episode featured critical stories about Ukraine and Greenland, saying CBS should pay a big price for going after him. So I get the sense reading this, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, that they're kind of blaming the Trump administration, not just the managers of 60 Minutes, or CBS, I should say, not just the managers of CBS, but they're once again putting the finger on Trump, for, I guess, taking away their ability to do their job. They did this in 2016. I remember they were saying, look, we just have to do journalism differently because this guy's such a big liar. So we can't do journalism the way we used to. He's challenging our norms of objectivity. That's how the New York Times put it. And they're once again pointing the finger at him. I guess I'm so fascinated by all of this because it's like I sit back and I think either they really are oblivious to the fact that at least half of the United States doesn't trust them and didn't even before Trump. That's one might add that's probably part of the reason Trump got elected. Trump's a symptom, you know what I mean? He's not
Mhm.
he's a symptom, he's not the disease, in other words, like if you were to look at it that way. He's a symptom. And he didn't create trust issues with the media. But they keep going back to blaming him. Why do you think that is?
Well, nobody wants to take responsibility for themselves. I mean, they all think they're self-righteous and that they could say whatever they want because whatever they say is a fact, even if it isn't. I mean, case in point, I'm just going to bring up the Hunter Biden laptop. I mean, every single news network said that was Russia disinformation, and they backed it up forever. And then after the election, 5 or 6 months later, you remember they all of a sudden, hey, that might have been accurate. Okay. They just slipped it in. So everybody's over it. But Allison, at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter because they have an antiquated product. It's not going to survive. And it has nothing to do with whether they're lying or not. It's just the way people consume information that's changed. By any chance, Allison, did you see Adweek's numbers on CBS, Fox, MSNBC? Did you see
No.
them? I'm
No.
going to give you some startling numbers.
Okay.
So, and I'll get to you what the story is.
Mhm.
Fox News was the largest with 3 million viewers for the quarter. Did you hear me? For the
Uh-huh.
quarter. Okay. Then you had MSNBC, which had 1 million. And then you had CNN, which had 580,000. So make it 600,000 for the quarter. Those are low numbers to begin with. That's 3 months. But the real numbers are the age group between 25 and 54, which probably represents 125 million people. The audience for Fox was 380,000, or if I'm wrong, it's 388, but it was that, just say 380. It
Mhm.
was 79,000 for CNN and it was 53,000 for MSNBC, which is roughly 500,000 people. Were the other 124,500,000 people? They're not watching network TV. The point is, the average age of the cable news viewer, the people that are watching 60 Minutes, is 70 plus. And the younger generation, there's a microcosm of them, but all the rest are somewhere else. That's the
Mhm.
news.
Yeah.
They're going out of business. If they were telling the truth, it wouldn't make a difference.
All right. Well, you know, um, who needs who needs a really good glass of wine right now is that guy that just quit 60 Minutes. All right. he's he's sitting at home, he's watching 60 Minutes, he's shaking his head, thinking, I can't believe this happened in my show. The world is going to hell. I really could use a good glass of wine, but all I can afford now that I don't have my job anymore is just cheap wine from the grocery store. So go send him some amazing AllisonWinePromo.com. All right. Or sign yourself up for it in honor of 60 Minutes getting new leadership. AllisonWinePromo.com is where you're going to get 6 bottles every 3 months. You will never be empty handed for whatever you're celebrating or mourning or whatever cocktail party you're going to, birthday party. My daughter's turning 5 next week. I can't even believe it. Anyway, you get in the club, you get your delivery, you don't have to worry about it anymore. And these are all wines that were hand selected for the stuff that I like, which is just very clean processing, hand picked grapes, for instance, grapes that are grown between 6 and 9,000 feet in elevation in very remote areas, like in Argentina, for instance, where they use very few pesticides. And these are family operations. One vineyard's been in business over 200 years, talking like 5th and 6th generation winemaking techniques, and they're still doing things in a lot of ways the way they used to. There's no nasty additives and dyes and fillers and stuff like they put in wines. A lot of the wines that you would just get locally at the grocery store. So go sign up for AllisonWinePromo.com. It's a great way to support the show. You will not be disappointed. You give them away as gifts. Give them as gifts if you don't like wine. And we'll see you in the wine club. All right, we are going to go one more time back to this article about 60 Minutes. So we're going to switch over to Sam's project, Your News, and how that is offering an alternative to the increasing. I guess I don't even want to. I don't know. It's just the demise. I guess. I mean, maybe it'll stay mainstream media. Is that the demise of mainstream media? Maybe not. Maybe there'll be enough people that will want to have it. But I guess final thought on this is the AP ends by saying that Trump has battled the press on several levels since taking office again. So once again, blaming him for this guy's complaint about editorial oversight. The FCC is investigating several media companies. The administration is working to shut down Voice of America and other government-run outlets. And the Associated Press has sued the administration for reducing its access to events because it has not renamed the Gulf of Mexico in line with Trump's executive order. Now, You know what I guess I really think is interesting about a lot of the stuff when they write about Trump is they discuss it like it's a new phenomenon of being adversarial with a government official. What that says to me is that they're used to being way too buddy buddy with everybody else or a lot of the other presidents. I mean, they complain about getting kicked out of these White House press meetings and they have these dinners with each other, the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and to me, it's a lot of it is just theater anyway. I don't think if you go to a press meeting at the White House, like you're going to necessarily get the truth no matter who's in office. The press secretary is paid with our tax dollars, which I don't love, to basically be a public relations person for the guy in charge or the lady in charge. And so I work for one of those. I work for a lady once. I know how public relations offices work for the government. So that's what they do, but they still act like it's this honor, like you're supposed to all just get along. It's supposed to be kind of this fraternity of journalists and government officials serving the American public. And so then when there's this adversarial relationship that erupts, they seem shocked. And I don't agree with everything that Trump's done. Like I think the Gulf of Mexico thing is, forcing the AP to say what they want. I disagree with his doing that. But, the fact that like he's going after some of these organizations for saying like you mentioned defamation, or they're using government funds to push a particular kind of propaganda. Maybe they shouldn't be getting government funds at all. If they want to have biased news, great, but you shouldn't necessarily be getting our tax dollars to do it. I just think it's very odd every time they talk about him, like they're so shocked that they're not better buddies. And it's like, why do you guys think you should be buddies with the president? Like when did we think journalists should be buddies with the president? That's just weird to me.
Well, remember, throughout history, they always have been, right? At least with on the liberal side. They buddied up with all the people at the CIA. They fed them all information. I mean, the job of the
Right.
CIA was to push out propaganda, and they all bought it. So, this is the relationship they have. Everybody in the news business is interested in getting the big story, right? That's the whole job. So if you're thinking to yourself, well, if I'm really close to that person, they'll just feed it to me. But really, you've heard the CIA Mockingbird, right? I mean, all they're doing is they're leveraging you to get their message out. So they're lying direct to the public, but they're using you as a vehicle to do it. So they really need to be separated.
Okay, Sam, let's talk about your news.
Sure.
You created your news
Hmm.
a few years ago. Maybe
Hmm.
we could talk about what is your news, and can you give us some background on you? How you decided that like you should be the person to launch something like this? What's your background? And so what is this, and who are you?
My background is not media; it's investment banking. It's I worked in downtown Chicago at Lehman Brothers for years. Um, this was just a couple of guys and myself got together, believed that particularly the newspaper industry was going to collapse years ago, and we set out to build a platform to replace the daily newspapers. And we had a lot of hurdles to go over. Nobody bought that story back at the time. Today everybody's scratching their heads going, are they still making that paper and delivering it? Right. I mean, nobody would believe that then, but today everybody's in shock that there's still a paper that exists. But what I never realized was, just how significant what I'm doing is. And the reason I say that is because all the antiquated products, we're talking print newspapers, terrestrial radio on the dial with the towers, we're talking the television stations, the network TV stations. Eventually, all of them are going to be gone, Allison. And it's not because, like I said, they were lying. It's just because it's an antiquated product. The example would be, everybody's heard of the telegraph, but nobody's ever sent one. It's because somebody created a telephone which replaced that particular industry. So there's still a demand for news. It's just how people consume it that's changed. So what this platform does is it allows free speech, but think of me as the local newspaper in every city in the United States with USA Today wrapped around it. So we're a hyper local news platform with a social component where the public can interact and share in the narrative locally, which is what the public wants. It has a monetization model for news reporters or content creators where they could submit their work, share it on their social media pages, and share in the ad revenue. And a self-service ad platform where somebody could log in and buy an ad targeted to one zip code and everywhere in between, right? So, all the landscape of media is changing. And I'm going to tell you, what we do will ultimately replace the legacy media, and this will become the next mainstream media. And it opens up the doors for anybody to become a citizen journalist.
If you're going to be a citizen journalist on Sam's platform, then you need teeth. There's nothing worse than somebody who has no teeth trying to report the news because we can't understand what you're saying. So go get yourself some greenpasture.org, promo code Allison for 10% off. This company has so many great products that you can check. In fact, I was just using the muscle rub yesterday, and they've got like a natural Vicks vapor rub. They've got this muscle rub. They've got all kinds of good stuff, coconut oils, ghee, whatever. But if you want the teeth stuff, okay, you want the good stuff for your teeth and really your brain and the rest of your body. But I started taking this fermented cod liver oil, concentrated butter oil blend over a decade ago because I was getting cavities all the time. And my dad told me about this doctor, a dentist at the turn of the 20th century, Weston Price, who's now known as one of the best known biological dentists of like the post-industrial era. He was seeing a lot of his patients are starting to get cavities. He thought it was probably because of processed foods that were starting to become more and more available. And he actually studied people around the world who had no dentists, indigenous cultures that were far removed from civilization. They had no dentists, but they had no cavities. And he was like, why do these people have no cavities and they have no dentists? And it really came down to the food they were eating. And this is essentially one of the products, that he said, if you put these two together, you have a concentrated butter oil, so a high vitamin D butter oil from cows on spring grasses, and you mix it with, the organ meat oil from a fish, then you're going to get more than if you just took one of these products. You're getting them together because each of them has particular vitamins that allow for the absorption of the other product. So it's mixed together for you. You don't have to go catch a fish and ferment the cod liver yourself. You don't have to get your cows. Like, we have totally useless cows we can't even catch. We just feed them for no reason. I don't know what we're doing here on this farm. But anyway, you don't have to do that. You can just go to greenpasture.org and buy it. Use promo code Allison for 10% off.